On May 11th, 2012, the nation watched in shock as Mick Philpott, a father of 17, stood before the cameras, his face a mask of anguish. 6 of his children had perished in a devastating house fire in Derby, England. At first, he appeared to be a grieving father, but as investigators peeled back the layers of his life, a horrifying truth emerged. Mick Philpott had orchestrated the fire himself. His motive? Twisted manipulation, a thirst for control, and an insatiable need for attention. But what kind of man could set fire to his own home, knowing his children were inside? And how did he manage to manipulate those around him into aiding his monstrous plan? This is the full story of Mick Philpott, a master manipulator whose greed and narcissism led to an unimaginable crime. Mick Philpott was born in 1956 and raised in a working-class family. Even as a child, he exhibited violent tendencies. By his teens, he was known for his explosive temper, particularly toward women. At 21, he viciously stabbed an ex-girlfriend after she left him, nearly killing her. The crime landed him in prison, but he was released early, having served only 3 years of a 7-year sentence. Mick's charm was deceptive. He had a way of convincing people he was harmless, a victim of circumstance. But behind closed doors, he was a tyrant. Over the years, he manipulated multiple women into sharing his home, using them for financial gain. By 2012, he lived with his wife, Mered, and his mistress, Lisa Willis, in a chaotic, overcrowded home filled with children. Mick didn't work. Instead, he lived off state benefits and relied on the women in his life to provide for him. He enjoyed playing the role of the dominant patriarch, ruling over his household with fear and manipulation. Lisa Willis had been one of Mick's wives for years, bearing him several children. She tolerated his abuse for as long as she could, but in February 2012, she finally gathered the courage to leave. She fled with her children, seeking safety and freedom from Mick's grip. Mick was enraged. Lisa's departure was more than just a blow to his ego. It threatened his lifestyle. With Lisa gone, so was a portion of his benefits, and more importantly, his control over her. He devised a sinister plan to force her back. His idea? Stage a dramatic fire at his home, frame Lisa for it, and portray himself as a heartbroken father. He believed the courts would return Lisa's children to him, ensuring he remained financially stable. But Mick didn't account for one thing. Fire is unpredictable. On May 11th, 2012, in the early hours of the morning, Mick, along with his wife Mered and friend Paul Mosley, put their plan into action. They poured petrol inside the hallway of their home and set it alight. The goal was to create enough damage to frame Lisa Willis while still being able to save the children. But within seconds, the fire spread uncontrollably. The smoke filled the upstairs bedrooms, where the children, 5, Jade, 10, John, 9, Jack, 8, Jesse, 6, Jaden, 5, and Dwayne, 13, slept. Thick black smoke choked the house. The fire Mick thought he could control had turned into a death trap. By the time firefighters arrived, it was too late. 5 of the children had already succumbed to smoke inhalation. Dwayne, the oldest, was rushed to the hospital, but he didn't survive. Mick and Mered Philpott appeared on national television just days after the tragedy. With trembling hands and tear-streaked faces, they begged for answers. Mick, a seasoned manipulator, played the role of the grieving father perfectly. But something felt off. His emotions seemed rehearsed. Investigators noticed that he was more interested in attention from the media than mourning his children. He basked in the public sympathy, shaking hands and giving interviews. Fire investigators quickly determined that the blaze had been deliberately set. The origin of the fire, the hallway, indicated arson. Suspicion grew when authorities found no signs of forced entry. Meanwhile, Mick's behavior raised further red flags. He showed no real grief, no interest in planning his children's funerals. Instead, he seemed more concerned about who would take care of his finances. His wife, Mered, was more subdued, but she too failed to show the devastation expected of a grieving mother. As police delved deeper, they uncovered disturbing testimonies. Friends and family described Mick as a controlling monster who saw his children as pawns. Then came the breakthrough. Mick had confided in a fellow inmate while in police custody, bragging about his plan and blaming Mered for messing it up. The trial was a spectacle. Mick, Mered, and Paul Mosley stood accused of manslaughter. The prosecution painted a grim picture of Mick as a power-hungry abuser who saw his family as nothing more than tools to serve his needs. In a chilling moment, the jury watched as footage of Mick's TV appeal played in the courtroom. Now, knowing the truth, the crocodile tears seemed grotesque. The most damning evidence came from the recordings of Mick and Mered's conversations while in custody. In one exchange, Mick referred to himself as a hero and laughed about his ability to manipulate the media. On April 4th, 2013, the jury found Mick and Mered guilty. Mick received a life sentence with a minimum of 15 years, while Mered and Mosley were sentenced to 17 years each. Aftermath: a community's fury. The public's reaction was one of pure outrage. People who had once pitied Mick now despised him. His surviving children wanted nothing to do with him. Lisa Willis, the woman he had sought to frame, was safe, but scarred forever by what had happened. Mered Philpott, once under Mick's spell, later claimed she was manipulated into the plan. But the damage was done. She had participated in the crime, and the world would never forgive her. Mick Philpott had spent years controlling those around him, believing himself untouchable. In the end, his own arrogance led to his downfall. He was not the grieving father he pretended to be. He was a killer, a master manipulator who sacrificed his own children for greed and control. Conclusion: lessons from the Philpott case. The Philpott case is a haunting reminder of the evil that can lurk behind closed doors. It highlights the devastating impact of domestic abuse and the dangers of unchecked narcissism. But more than anything, it is a tragic story of 6 innocent children who deserved better, a future stolen by the very man who was supposed to protect them. And that is the true crime of Mick Philpott. Share your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more nerve-wracking stories.